There we go. Now we're ready to start. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to have you all here for this session, uncovering uninsured prospects using some census data, some no-cost tools that we want to share with you here today to help you grow and expand your books of business in whatever niche you find yourself working in. My name is Randy Lober, Learning and Development Specialist here at Action Benefits, and I'll be driving most of the conversation here today. Here to help us out in moderating questions and making sure everything flows smoothly here today is my counterpart in Learning and Development, Chelsea Smith. Chelsea, would you please introduce yourself to the crowd here as well?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea Smith. I'm also a Learning and Development Specialist here at Action. My hope today is to field some of the questions you have, so please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A feature to ask any questions you might have. I'm going to keep my camera off for the most part so the focus can stay on our presenter, but if you have any questions, again, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat, and I will try my best to get to all your questions as quickly as I can. I hope this is a great session for you guys.
Not even hope, we know it will be a great session for you here today. Let's go ahead then and dive into today's session. We know your time is valuable, so let's kind of put out some tent poles for where we want to go here this morning. First, I want to kind of sit with these questions for a minute. What would it mean for your business if you could perhaps locate communities with concentrations of female-owned businesses to shop your products to? Maybe you're working in the group market. Maybe you're trying to find your niche, the specific slice of the market that you work with and excel in to really build your reputation there. What could it mean for your business if you could quickly identify which zip codes have a high concentration of people over the age of 65? Or what could it mean if you could know fairly quickly which zip codes have a median income of over $50,000 and a significant uninsured rate? Or what if you could quickly determine which industries were losing workers in your county and or state, and do all of this at no cost? Would you please take a moment or two, write a few words in the chat window. As Chelsea mentioned earlier, the chat is available to you down in the center of your screen. What would it mean if you could do any or all of these things? I'll sit tight here for a moment, let you think, let you type on those responses. Yeah, so seeing some quick thinking in. Keep in mind that when you have the chat window, you can choose where you want your responses to be seen, or who you want your responses to be seen by, rather. You can choose to either direct it to hosts and panelists like Chelsea and I, and so only Chelsea and I see it, or you can choose it to go to everyone, so everyone can see it, as it implies. But some good things coming up here in the chat. Definitely could mean more prospects, right? Could zero in on some areas, and Dennis brings up you can focus in on some areas here as well. Hallett brings up the idea of knowing where those things are, but the next issue is getting contact info for those in the target market. We'll talk a little bit about that here today as well. Not the focus of today's session, but Hallett, we hope you give us some good ideas toward the end of today's session of where to go. So lots of good thinking here, and if any or all of those thoughts resonate with you about finding the right areas to focus your marketing in, or finding more prospects, or knowing what to do next, then you're in the right place with us here for the next 50-ish minutes of our lives together. With those ground rules in place, let's go ahead and kind of dive into what we're talking about here today. And we are going to be spending some time with the U.S. Census Bureau. What all of our tax dollars go toward funding, and because they are taxpayer-funded services, taxpayer data collection tools, yes, we have to pay taxes for them, but for now, for you, we're using them as an agent in your business growing capacity. They are of no cost to you. So so agents of any marketing budget, agents of any current size, whether you're just starting out, or maybe you have a well-established book and you're looking for some new zip codes or cities to pick off or regions to add, good fit for you here, at least to start some of the investigatory work that goes into marketing. And so, yes, we are talking about that Census Bureau. They do more than conduct a census and send that survey out every 10 years for us to get to. There's over 180 other surveys that they engage in to take a pulse on the state of our nation. Of particular interest to us in today's session and as insurance agents are 5 of those tools or 5 of those different surveys that they participate in. We're not going to go through each and every one of them. I'm going to show you some tools that compile all that data into some pretty user-friendly display tools. But those are the data sources we're going to look at today. We're going to look at the American Community Survey, which does happen yearly, updated every year in December, and that is one of the data sources that feeds what we'll talk about here today. Think of that like a mini census. It's a smaller sample size, but the Census Bureau uses it to kind of take a pulse on the country in those interim years between every 10 years. There's the economic census, which, as you might guess, deals directly with a lot of economic indicators. The annual business survey is published yearly as well, where the census does issue more surveys to business owners throughout the nation to compile some data about who runs those businesses, who owns those businesses, what are their employee makeups. The census also draws in economic indicators drawn from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics to help feed some of the data we'll talk about here today. That data is refreshed quarterly. And there's also the Local Employment Dynamics Survey, which is updated quarterly as well. And that is where we'll spend some time in the last part of the session talking a little bit about how we know which industries are gaining jobs, which industries are losing jobs, and at what rate and what proportion. So a few different data sources we'll look at. We'll notice, though, I do want to point out that none of these are updated day to day, right? They're updated on a yearly or quarterly basis as data is compiled, as the survey is administered. So there's always going to be a bit of data lag here, right? But for a free and tremendous resource, there's really not many things you can beat in terms of finding out more about the communities around you. So I mentioned that we're going to talk through and look at 2 different tools today. We're going to look at the Census Business Builder. The tool, as the name implies, is really meant for businesses of all sizes, typically targeted towards small businesses or smaller businesses in Census Bureau marketing. What it's geared for is finding out the demographic information, socioeconomic information about particular communities, so businesses can at least make an informed decision about where their target market is, which is how we want to use that here today. The right side of your screen is a longitudinal employer and household dynamics, or LEHD, and that's going to give us a lot of the job figures, where who's gaining jobs, who's losing jobs, where are those jobs moving to. So we'll spend some time there in the back end of today's session. So all that said, we're going to start with our first case study here. We're going to go from sort of the simple answers to find to the more complex answers to find using some of the tools. And like I said, after I share my screens, after I switch my screens in just a moment, highly encourage you to work along with me so you can get a feel for what it's like as you're clicking through some of these tools. Maybe you want to watch me do it. That's completely up to you. We are recording this. You'll get this a little bit later on. Do whatever feels most comfortable to you here. So the first case study we want to start with is, where can I find female-owned businesses? As I said at the top, maybe you want to carve out your niche. Maybe it's not female-owned. Maybe it's minority-owned businesses or veteran-owned businesses. And you want to kind of see where those most dense areas are if you're working in the group market. There's other variables we can take a look at too. If you're working only in individual or only in Medicare, you can filter by age and so on and so forth, but want to have a little something for everyone here today. So our goal here today, if we do our jobs well, is to use the Census Business Builder to produce a map that tells us what percentage of female-owned firms in each city or town near us exist. And of course, we know if we want to build our business, our niche is in serving female-owned businesses. We want to go where things are a little more dense with those businesses, maybe like Orchard Lake Village or here in Royal Oak. Lots of different things for us to consider here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off so you don't have to see my thinking face while I switch screens. But I will switch screens, move us over to the Census Business Builder, and walk you through how to use this tool to find that question. Then let's go ahead and zoom back in what I wanted to do here today. I went to say cbb.census.gov and found my way here. I looked for Sterling Heights. I know that I can look for the total population, but that's not super important to me here. What I really want to zero in on is those female-owned businesses so I can grow that in each of my business. So across the top here, I have two variables I can look through and some filters I can apply here as well. We're going to start simple, and I want to find some information about businesses. And in particular, I want to find information about female-owned businesses. So you look here, there's a number of data sources I can use. I can look at total annual payroll in thousands. I can look at percent minority-owned employer firms. I can find all kinds of things, Asian-owned employer firms, if that's helpful to me when I'm building my niche. But I really want to zero in on female-owned employer firms here. As I selected that variable, the map sort of populated around that. And now I have an idea of where some of these female-owned firms are located. So I know that some of the densest areas are in blue here. If I were to go and double click on that area, it would zoom in for me. Tell me that Orchard Lake Village it might be a good place to start some mailers, getting some boots on the ground, connecting with those businesses. If I wanted to know more about this area over here next to Royal Oak, I can zoom in a little bit more and know where Berkeley is and those sorts of things here as well. So there's one thing I can do. If I want to keep this data, I want to print it. I have options to download a report from over here. It'll generate an Excel link or an Excel file for me that I can download, keep on my dashboard, or keep on my desktop rather, and access information there. The other thing we should point out is that all of the links here, no matter what you do, no matter what variables you input into your session, they're all recorded for you up here, and they're all static links, which means if you were to copy and paste this, or you wanted to bookmark this tab, you could come back to this at any time, or you could send it off to maybe someone else in your agency or someone else that you're working with to develop your marketing plan. You can kind of zero in on those things, share this data rather quickly, and zoom in on those features that are important to you. There are some other things we can do here too with the Census Builder, and we're going to go ahead and move into our second case study with this regard. So a quick recap of what we did though before we move to that second case study is we went to cbb.census.gov. We entered our target location. We set our variables. We adjusted our scale, whether we wanted to look at state, zip code, or otherwise. We do have options to download data and generate those reports. And again, we can add those bookmarks if desired. So that's one level of data. That's a pretty simple application of the platform here. But what we can do is get a little more sophisticated in our query. Maybe I have a question that looks like this. Maybe I want to know which zip codes have a high concentration of people age over 65. And maybe even more than that, what's more important to me is maybe I know where people over 65 are, but maybe I also want to find how many people in that zip code currently have health insurance. Well, we can do that too. So let me go back over to the Census Business Builder, and we can find that information. So up here, we're going to change some of our variables. So I don't have to go back to cbb.census.gov, though I could if I wanted to refresh. I wanted to start over. Right now, we're going to go ahead and zero in on changing our variables here. And if before we wanted to find out about businesses, this time we want to find out about the people that live in these areas. But I don't want total population. I don't really care at the moment the percent male or female. What I want is the percent 65 years and older. I can also layer another variable on top of that. So in my second variable, if I looked at my socioeconomic characteristics, I could look at median household income or average income. what I'm really concerned with here at the moment is the percentage of folks with health coverage. And I'll zoom out just so we can get a view of what's going on here. And your immediate reaction is, man, that map is probably really tough to read and I can't quite make sense of it. I would agree. So what we can also do here is filter down some of that data so we can zero in on what's most important to us. So say, for example, I'm not really concerned about these counties when I'm working about my next mailer or my next social media ads. I don't really care the counties that only have 4.5%. What I want to know is about these counties that have 33% of that population is 65% or older, or maybe these ones that are 21 or 16% older. So I can set a filter up here. And again, using those demographic characteristics, I can go down to ages percent 65 years and older. And maybe I want to increase this up to 15% or so. That gives me one spot I can zero in. You see that some counties go gray because they no longer meet our criteria, and we can zero in a little bit further. If I want to go down to the zip code level, I certainly can do that too. That's helpful for some of those mail codes or mail buys or social media ads you might do, or for getting your boots on the ground. Some data is available at the census tract level. Usually when you have two variables though, so I'm looking for over 65 and percent with health coverage, that gets, at least in the government's eyes, pretty close to personally identifiable information. So those, the more you narrow in, the less likely it is you'll be able to find the exact data that you're looking for. But here at the zip code level, we have some ways we can filter that here too. But maybe I also want to know a little bit more. Maybe I also want to zero in on where exactly are these people or are these areas that don't have a lot of health coverage. So knowing what we know about recent statistics, the average health insurance rate here in Michigan is about 95%. So maybe I want to look for those communities that are maybe a little bit below average. Maybe I want to find, or I can type in here, maybe I want to find things that are 94% and fewer. And with those two filters applied, what we've done is zero in on some zip codes that are potentially some high value targets for building your Medicare business. We've zeroed in on up here, we've got 48310, we've got 48203, we've got 480093 over here in the Warren area. And certainly we can zoom in more if you wanted to know more, say about what roads these are by, what neighborhoods these are by, if it's drivable to you, we could do that too. And oh, by the way, if we wanted to go over and switch to city and town view, we could go visit Kalamazoo, maybe one of these on the west side over there. And we could see what exactly the landscape looks like over here if you were looking for that. So there's some ways we can definitely play with the data and filters and find out more about what we're looking for. So that helps us answer that second big question. How can I find out where people who are over 65 and uninsured live? Now, one thing I should point out about these data sets is this data that we're looking at does not tell you necessarily if they are 65 and uninsured. It doesn't give you information about specific people. What these two variables do tell you is that there is a high percentage of folks that are over 65 and a high percentage of folks who do not have health coverage here, relatively speaking. I want to point out that, so we're not necessarily, we're looking at two different data sets here. It's not giving you a Venn diagram, but knowing where people are over 65 and are uninsured helps me better target some of my advertising or my marketing efforts. And that's the thrust of what this data can do us. And really, again, for a free data source, a pretty powerful tool. I'm going to stop sharing that screen then and talk a little bit about our next example here. Let's visit let's visit our next case study here. So again, we follow some similar steps. We look at this cbb.census.gov. This time we play with multiple variables and filters. We adjusted our scale. We moved in and out to zoom in on counties and zip codes and so on and so forth. We could, again, download that data if we wanted to and generate reports. And again, just as in the first case study, you could add that to your bookmarks. You could come back to it over time as well. The third case study we want to look at, and maybe this is relevant for folks that are working in the under 65 market. Which zips have a median income of $50,000 or greater and a high concentration of uninsured? And we picked $50,000 for this example because in most cases, though not always, a median income of $50,000 means you're not likely eligible for Medicaid, right? So that means your under 65 marketing time, dollars, effort could be well spent in these areas because you have prospects you know that you could convert here. And again, we want to look for concentrations of uninsured communities here as well. So again, we're trying to produce a map that looks like this. Again, we want to look for a median income of more than 50 grand a year. We want to look at a below average health coverage for that county. And so we're going to again use variables and filters to help us accomplish those tasks. So I'll move over to this screen one final time. And in my variables, I can switch. Again, we still want to know about consumers and residents, but this case, I am more concerned about their socioeconomic characteristics, and I want to zoom in on their median household income. Now, with those few clicks, I've got a map that's almost helpful for me. I've got a legend here, but again, the income goes up fairly high here. I've already got some of the filters in place from before. I'm going to go ahead and wipe out those filters and give us a clean map with just those two variables. So again, right now we are comparing median household income and percent with health coverage. And let's bring this back over to Southfield, here where Action Benefits calls home. So again, I have household incomes, I have percent with health coverage, not the most easy map on the eyes to read, to use, to decipher. So let's add some filters to it. I again want to know about consumers. In this case though, I want to know one socioeconomic characteristic. I want to look at median household income, and I don't want any communities with less than a 50K median household income here. The other filter we want to add is, again, we're concerned about the insured rate here. So I can go down here, and again, you can look at poverty rates, you can look at population over 16, you can look at employment rates. But again, what's important to us here is the insured rate, percent with health coverage. And again, knowing that state average is about 95, I maybe want to go a little bit lower than that. I want to go down to 94 here, so I can look at some areas where I might have some more rich prospecting opportunities. And that really narrows down what it is I'm able to look at. I zoomed out a little bit too far here. Let's zoom back in so it shows me the data we're looking at. This is how you know it's a live demo. So if I zoom back into the zip code level here, you can see it's processing here, and it's going to show me these communities again. So if, for example, I want to know where it, here in Southeast Michigan, it could be a good idea to spend some of my under 65 marketing time and attention. Here in 48220 could be an option, right? I've got median income of over 65,000 and a relatively significant uninsured rate here as well. Same for Madison Heights, same over here for Warren and Sterling Heights here as well. Lots of opportunities to potentially grow your business here. So with that said, let's go ahead and stop sharing this screen. We'll go back to the presentation one more time for just a moment or two before we move forward. Okay, so again, we follow the same steps. We went to cbb.census.gov. We played with our target locations, our variables and filters. We adjusted scale to start up high at, we could start at the county level. We could zero down to zips or census tracts if we want to. And again, you have options to download that data, generate reports, or even add each of those distinct reports to your bookmarks if desired. So all that said, I want to pause here. That's the end of one tool we're looking at. I want to take a look. Chelsea, are there any questions that are outstanding for us that we might need to attend to before we look at a separate set of tools here?
Not any outstanding questions as of right now. Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Then let's take a look at case study number 4. Maybe I'm working in the group market and I want to know maybe which industries I should or should not be paying attention to when marketing my product portfolio to them. Or maybe I am working in the individual market and I want to know which industries are losing workers. So I can post up outside those industries and or market with them to help some of those under 65 employees take advantage of the special enrollment periods they may now be entitled to. So a few different reasons you could want to access these data. Let's dig here into case study number 4, which industries are losing workers. And our goal here again is to get to, we're going to use a different tool this time, the QWI Explorer. And what we want to do is again find out in Michigan which jobs are or which industries are experiencing separations. That's a government term for losing workers, whether that's quit, resign, fire, laid off. We're going to look at that by looking for industry codes, and we're going to group our data here by quarters. So we can look at some of the most relevant data, or if we so choose, to either look at the most recent published quarter or the most recent published series of quarters to help us out and make some decisions about where we want to go. So we're going to go to a different window over here, and we are going to go to Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics, or the LEHD tab right over here. And that is going to bring us to a few options. We're going to look at 2 separate tools here today. One of them is the QWI Explorer, which we'll get to in just a moment. And we'll also look at the J2J, which is the J2 Job-to-Job Explorer, which gives us another way to answer this question here as well. If we go over to the job or the QWI Explorer, if we go to the QWI Explorer, we're going to get what looks like a lot of unintelligible data. This is a veritable spaghetti mess of lines that aren't really helpful for us here. We can choose our geography. We can choose our indicator. For example, we might want to see which industries are hiring. And so it's going to populate that data. We can see who is, where we're losing jobs here as well. We can add more filters. Maybe I want to zero in on particular counties, whatever, as that might be appropriate to my use case here. So maybe I want to look at, St. Joseph County and see what's going on up there, or out west there. And we'll click OK. Let me zoom back in here. We still have, even though we're looking at St. Joseph County, there's still a lot of lines here, some things that are unintelligible here to us. Can't quite make sense of it yet. Although if I did click on this big blue line, I know that support activities for crop production, which comes up here and is filtered down for me here, is where they gained a lot of business here, at least in 2017. 2017 might not be too helpful to you. So what you can do is use the x-axis here and choose quarters or yearly averages, whatever makes sense to you here. I'm going to go with quarters and click on this link. It's going to allow me to zero in on the particular time periods I want to look at. So I'm going to uncheck a few boxes here because really what I want to know is what happened in the most recent quarter. Where should I be spending some of my time and attention? Now, I do want to remind you that each of these data sets are lagging data sets. They show what happened in the past. And in fact, for this particular report, Q4 of 2021 is not yet available. So I do want to give you that grain of salt. This is all lagging data, but you can get a good idea of where the wind is blowing, so to speak, by looking at some of that lagging data. So if we looked here at Q4, and I'm trying to zoom out enough so I can actually confirm that I want that report. I'll zoom back in so it's friendly to you here. And maybe I don't want a line graph. Maybe I do want a bar graph here instead for one quarter and some of these industries here. This graph is a little more helpful to me. I can click on each bar and find, for example, that oilseed and grain farming, for example, lost some jobs here in Q3 of 2021. If I want to know, again, flip it over to see who's gaining jobs in that same quarter. I can do the same thing. Clicking on each bar will help us out. I know that fruit and tree farming is a big gainer here, apparently, in St. Joseph County during that same time period. So that's one way we can answer that question: which industries are gaining or losing jobs? Let's go ahead and, as a bonus to you here today, I wanted to show you a fifth question here as well that we can take a look at. So again, that process looks a little bit different. That is not cbb.census.gov. That is lehd.census.gov. We use the QWI Explorer. We chose our target geographies using Michigan here. We chose our product indicator. We set our X and Y axes. We use the arrows in the table to support that data. We could download that data or again, generate reports if desired here as well. The last case study we want to look at today is which industries are losing workers and where are they going? Maybe it's important to you as you're building your group, the group portion of your book of business. You want to know what industries are warming up a little bit, where you can find people that might need your services, or what the churn looks like here in the local economy. We can do that too using some of this data. So we'll come back over to a different tool over here. And this is the Job-to-Job Flows Explorer, or the J-to-J Flows Explorer that we talked about a bit earlier. Window looks a little bit different here. You can choose to start look at hires to or separations from. You can choose your geography and then which sectors you want here as well. What I am most concerned with, what we're most concerned with here is which industries report. So I'm going to click on that blue link here. And it's going to give me a bar graph that tells me a bit of things. But what's really interesting about this particular report is if I bring it over here to matrix view. And if I were to take this same view to full screen, it gives me a bit of a heat map. On the left side here are 20 of the most popular industries here in Michigan. On the right, and these are our origin industries. On the right side is, or at the top rather, is our destination industries. So this is where workers are coming from and which industries workers are going to. For example, this square that tells me that there is a lot of movement from construction to other construction jobs, which makes a bit of sense. If I were to look at this row, retail trade, well, of course, they're going to retail trade, but you also see them moving into transportation. You see them moving into administrative roles, the healthcare industry, as well as accommodations. So you're looking at hotels and things like that here as well. And you also have some people going from accommodations, so retail, or tourism, hotels, and things like that, over to retail here as well. So that heat map can be pretty useful in figuring out where exactly people are and where they are going as you look at things. Again, you have multiple filters you can look at over here. You can zero in on particular business sectors or firm sizes or ages. You can narrow your geography down to particular states or metro areas. And again, we can filter that here. Right now, the report I just showed you came from any state to Michigan. But if I were to refine that a bit and want to look at only job movement in Michigan, I'm going to get a new table up here that shows me a little bit different of a story. And I'll bring this back up to full screen so you can see. So again, we see some movement in construction. We see people from manufacturing actually going over into administrative tasks and over into tourism, hospitality, and things like that. We see some people moving around in retail and a lot of other trends here in the economy and the employment sectors, which businesses are gaining and which businesses are losing all throughout. So again, to recap how we got there, let's bring you back to this tab here. And we went to lehd.census.gov. We opened up the job to job or J2J Explorer. At that first screen, we chose our hires or separations, which one we were interested in, as well as our geography and sectors. We chose that which industries analysis, and then we switched over to matrix view. So we could get that heat map of where the origin industries are, where employees are leaving, and those destination industries, where they're going to. We showed you could filter down to the state level and other geographies as well, even down to metro areas as might be most important to you. So again, lots of power there in playing with the filters to find more about how businesses are performing in the areas closest to you or in the markets you're interested in working in. Before we go on to the now what portion, the what do I do with all this information now that I have it, want to check in with Chelsea. Is there anything we need to clean up with in the chat or Q&A feature?
There aren't any questions at this time unless anyone is holding out on us.
Okay, that's fair. Then let's talk about the now what. And here, Hallett, is where we will deliver on one of the promises I made a bit earlier, though not delivering it in huge depth here with the short time we have left here together this morning. So there are a few things you can do with this data. And one thing you can do is merge your findings with data from third-party providers. What does that mean? There are plenty of mailing vendors out there that you can use. So maybe if you know you want to zip zero in on zip code 48310, or maybe you want to zero in on Sterling Heights, there are mailing vendors out there that you can reach out to actually get the contact information for all of the people that live in that particular zip code within Sterling Heights or Madison Heights or in Kalamazoo, whatever is interesting to you. One thing, as long as you're using government services, one thing you could do to help you in that particular venture is consider every door direct mail from USPS. As it sounds, USPS does give you that direct mailing option. They will mail it to every, with your input, mail to every person within that zip, of course, with your ad buying there. May not be the most targeted approach, right? Because they do just print out flyers and deliver it just like you'd get circulars in your daily mail otherwise. But it could be an option, especially if you're just entering this arena. And that address, finding particular addresses and things like that, it could be a first step on your first mailing campaign. The other thing you could think about, which is in our experience a bit less expensive, is target your social media ads to identify geographies. So if you were looking to advertise on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn for your agency, when you go and purchase those ads, and at fairly reasonable costs, especially considered to a mailing campaign, they're going to ask you where you want those ads run. So you could say, I want my ads run for my agency, in Sterling Heights or in Kalamazoo or in Utica, whatever makes most sense to you. And maybe you don't have marketing dollars on hand, or that is a bit far out from your agency. maybe you are just starting up. At least now you know what zip codes you could go get your boots on the ground in. You could pull up, your staff, or if you're working independently, go start knocking on doors of either businesses or individuals in those areas where you can go ahead and start making a difference, right? And start offering some of your products and services to them. So all of that said, I did promise about 45, 50 minutes. We are right here on that 45-minute mark. So right where we want to be here this morning. Want to thank you all for your time and attention here today. It's always a pleasure spending some time with our agents here. I always love seeing you all here early-ish in the morning with me. If you have any questions about what you've heard today, certainly feel free to put them out here. Chelsea and I, of course, have some time where we can spend some time with you, maybe go over more specific examples or help you find a particular answer you're looking for. And please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn at the Action Benefits Company. If you want to know more about us or about this particular training, info@actionbenefits.com, or always please feel free to reach out to us at 248-356-8585. Excellent question, Dennis. And for those of you out there in the recording world who didn't see me, don't see Dennis's question, who are viewing this later, he asked what the average cost is for mailing. And this is going to be a really unsatisfying answer, Dennis. So I know this, but it depends. Depends on what exactly you're mailing. So what postage are required, depends on who's doing the creative work for you, right? We're happy to kind of work with you to mock up postcards. USPS will do this something similar with you. They'll help you facilitate that creative process. Also depends on the biggest. So I can't give you or the audience or the size of your list is the sentence I didn't complete there. So it depends on what you want to do exactly. I think it'd be irresponsible of me to throw out a exact cent percent or per piece cost here at the moment. Really depends on exactly what you want to do, where you want to do it, and how big that mailing list is. So again, I know it's unsatisfying, but feel free to work with us to, we can work together on an answer for that. Okay. We are here, like I said, closer to the top of the hour than we were a few moments ago. If you must leave, again, thank you for your time and attention. Always love spending time with our agents here in the morning. Chelsea and I are happy to stick around for a few more moments for any other lingering questions you might have. Well, you're going to hear me stop the recording here in just a moment as well. Chelsea and I will still be here.